It's the Nighttime Show! Live from Hollywood, California at the Improv Studios tonight, we have our head writer, Matt Mother Effin' Walker, and a very special guest, the puppeteer from the Muppets, Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, and Little Shop of Horrors, also the star of Return of the Jedi, The Force Awakens, and the upcoming Star Wars Episode 8, Mike Quinn. And now, more cupcake than man, twisted and evil, our host, Stephen Kramer Glickman!
Yeah! Hey! How we all doing?
Yeah.
Mike,
it's always great when Mike Black does that.
Mike Black, you're a very good announcer. You're a very talented fella, almost as talented as our guest today.
You're the second most talented Mike on the show today, Mike.
Yeah, stop it. Absolutely.
You flatter me.
Mike Quinn, it is. I've been a huge fan of you for a long time, and your action figure, and I'm super excited.
So much. I feel like
so happy.
Talk like that now. Yes, but I don't think I'll be able to too long. So
That's so awesome.
yeah, thank you.
How are things going? Where are you at? What's happening in your life right now? Currently, I know you're. They just announced a couple days ago that you may be in Rogue One. You may not be, but
I sort of didn't. There was an article that's put forward a rather good argument for Nien Nunb being in the movie, but I think people might be a bit disappointed, really, because I don't remember doing anything on there. But I thought it was an interesting article altogether. But theoretically, the Numbster would be around, I think, being a smuggler and all that stuff back then. But he'd be a distraction to the story. So I hate to burst everyone's bubble.
This could be a really awkward way of finding out you've been replaced. Just he shows up in the movie without you.
That will never happen. I have people on the inside.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
It's all good. My goodness. So what am I doing now? I'm doing this really cool show called the Nighttime Show. Actually, it's really exciting. And I have a cup of coffee in my hand, and it's all good. So it's good actually. No, seriously, right now. Oh, it's really a nice time because things kind of got a bit busy and mental for a couple of years, which was great, but I was never home.
Yeah.
So now I'm actually home a little bit more, and it's just come at just the right time. It's wonderful to spend a little more time just kind of chilling and catching up with people, doing some of my own work and projects, and just a little bit less travel and some more rest and time for thought and creativity and all that kind of thing. So that's sort of where I'm at. It's a very nice time right now and much appreciated.
Well, you're such an incredible talent. My question for you that I'd love to start with is I know that before Return of the Jedi and before Dark Crystal and the Great Muppet Caper and of course now into Force Awakens and everything else, I would just love to know how your career started. Like, how did this all start for you?
That's a very good question. I think some fairy dust and let's see. Yeah,
where did you grow? Like, where did you grow up?
Where did I grow up?
Yeah,
I grew up at home. And no, sorry. I was born in Chatham in Kent, in the east coast of England, southeast of England. And we moved away from there when I was about 2. So I actually grew up in a town called Enfield, where they originally made the Enfield rifles. I don't know if anyone's heard of those, but they were a big thing many years ago.
Sure.
I grew. It's sort of North London area now, and I grew up there. So my sister was in the entertainment business as a child performer, and she was 2 years older than me. She still is 2 years older than me.
in like TV stuff, or what type of stuff was she doing?
She did a little tiny bit of film work, but mostly she did some stage acting in the Christmas musicals. Some large theatres. One of them was at the London Palladium, which was one of the largest ones in the West End of London. So she did that kind of thing. She would sing and she played piano and things like that. She actually even had a ventriloquist act for a little while. So she had a dummy that when I was a kid I'd sort of secretly play with and bring to life. And it was like an early form of an animatronic, basically, because it had eye blinks and eye turns, and you could make the mouth open and close. So, or with mechanisms. So I guess I had a little look into animatronics when I was probably about 8 years old, or 6, 7, or whatever.
Yeah, right.
But so my sister was around doing a lot of, and she did talent competitions and that kind of thing. And I did a few auditions and failed miserably because I was terrible. I had a magic act when I was about, 7 or so, and 7 and 8, and a little glove puppet show that I did in a booth. So I sort of got into it that way as a kid.
What was the first magic trick you learned?
Yeah, and puppets are kind of magic anyway. They're another illusion, if you like. So an illusion of life. So
I always feel like
sort of into that stuff, but I was quite shy as a kid, you see. So I was quite happy hiding behind the puppets.
You know, I run into a lot of comedians and a lot of actors who started out doing magic because it was like a way of performing an actual like show when you're very, when you're very young, and especially, your first audience is usually your family. So.
I really wanted to do card tricks, but my hands were too small and I couldn't really kind of handle them too well. Plus, you have to have a lot of good patter when you're doing some of those acts. And of course, I wasn't very vocal in those days. So the magic act I had involved some large illusion props, And I think initially I even did the act just a piano accompaniment. So it was completely mute. And then finally I started speaking and sort of became more vocal as I got a bit older. But, I was sort of on the outside of all that kind of thing. And it wasn't really until Muppet Show came along in 1976 that I started to really get into puppets big time and figuring out how they were built and worked and performed. So that's where my real interest really kind of went through the roof, I guess.
Were your parents supportive of this newfound interest?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, they left me alone, which was actually quite good. But they were okay with it. I mean, I was the first kid in my school to actually take I don't know what they called it back then, sewing class or something, so I could stitch up puppets. I didn't want to make belt buckles and wooden whatevers. I wanted to make puppets, so I actually took sewing for 2 years so I could just build puppets on school time.
Oh my God.
So, plus, I was the only boy. I mean, they'd never, the teacher there had never taught a boy before. She was like, I don't know if I can do this. It's crazy.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, how times have changed.
How good were your puppets back then? Were you able to make something that looked pretty good, or did they look pretty crude?
Yeah, they were kind of Muppet. I made monsters and animals and birds and stuff like that out of fleece and fur and foam.
Do you remember?
They kind of look Muppet-like, This would be when I was 14, 15, that kind of thing. So I'd already figured out some basic stuff by then. And I had met the main Muppet guys in 1977 when they were appearing in London on a radio show of all things. So I kind of intercepted them on the way in and met them for the first time.
Wow.
Stalking pays off.
I guess I was like 13 then, I think, something like that. So yeah, when I found out that they actually made the Muppet Show in the UK, it was like a 30-minute bus ride from where I lived. I just couldn't believe that. I always thought the Muppet Show was made in the States, being such an American show, but it wasn't. And so I in 1980 I was able to get into the studio. I basically on a regular basis, I would bribe my way past security with chocolates and cigarettes and all the things that you cannot do anymore, of course. And I would get in to watch them. Usually they were taping celebrities. Like they had like Diana Ross, Linda Carter, Gene Kelly, all kinds of people like that.
Yeah.
So they got to know me there, and I would bring puppets along that I'd built. And I became a regular, sort of like their main number one visible fan, I guess, that would visit the studio like every other week. I'd actually have time off school to what I would call work experience, So I guess I just about got away with that one. The school had given up on me at that time anyway. It's like, oh, good, he's not here today. Good, we can get on with teaching everyone things again. So it was a win-win for everyone. But yeah, Jim was there. Jim Henson was there, and he would put puppets on that I'd built, and they all kind of encouraged me, and they all got to know me, which was really nice. And then they finished taping the Muppet Show in the summer of 1980, which was also when I finished school.
Wow.
So they went across the street to the film studio, the Elstree Film Studios, and that's when they started filming their first the Great Muppet Caper, which was their second film. And so they were actually they started out on location, and I was ready to put in my job application at that time. So I made up this envelope with pictures of puppets and a nice letter, and found out where they were in the Hertfordshire countryside, and got on a series of buses. By the end of the day, I finally arrived on location, and they were finishing up the last scene. And it happened to be Jim Henson's 44th birthday. And so I gave him my envelope, and he was, oh, thank you very much. And he thought it was a birthday card. So I thought, oh, well, I'll let him think that, and off we all went at the end of the day. But within a week or two, I got a call from the exec producer, Dave Laser, and they said, they wanted to try me out for a week and have me do some background stuff, which was just crazy. I mean, I had no training, how I was 16. I mean, wow. So but it kind of went on from there, and they just kept extending my my contract, and they gave me more and more important things to do. I ended up assisting Jim with Kermit and Ralph, and Frank with Piggy and Fozzie, and doubling up for principal characters in wide shots and crowd scenes and stuff like that. So I never really auditioned, and I think Jim Henson just had this sort of ability, this knack of knowing there are certain kinds of people that he knew would if they didn't know everything, they could learn. They're enthusiastic. They could mold us. I guess we didn't have any sort of bad habits as such, and I mean, I was cheap as well, but I'm sure that wasn't have to do with it. But he actually was, Jim. It was very sweet, Jim. I heard many years later that Jim was kind of concerned that he was keeping me away from my college education, which I didn't know at the time. But that wasn't an option for me, as it isn't for a lot of people. I had to get out and work. So this was the best thing that could have happened to me.
God,
and Dark Crystal came out of that, and Return of the Jedi came out of that. So those first three movies, those first 2 to 3 years, laid the groundwork of everything I've ever done ever since. And I'm still utilizing the experience that I got out of those early days. So that's basically how I got into it.
Wow. Oh, my God. That is phenomenal.
I sure am having a great time. This is a lot of fun. Aren't you having just a great time?
Awesome.
Man, oh man. The only thing that could really make it better, and I gotta tell you, the only thing that can make it better is if I popped open this bottle of Fireball whiskey right now.
That would be better.
Oh my God.
I love Fireball.
Yeah, that's actually the bottle talking right now.
Wait, what?
That's the bottle.
Whoa.
Can you hear it? Wait, I'm sorry. I have to hold it up. I'm going to hold it up.
Hold it to the microphone.
I'm going to hold it right up to the microphone.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Isn't that incredible? You can hear it right there.
Oh, y'all getting loose, huh?
Oh, yeah. We're going to get loose with you.
That Fireball knows like 90s hip hop references.
He does.
Sounds like.
How you doing inside that bottle?
I'm ready to come on out, show y'all what a real good time is. Not trying to be sexual, but I am trying to show you what fun looks like.
I'm going to take you out of that bottle. I'm going to pour you in my mouth. How's that sound?
It sounds real good. Just open up that.
This is...
What was that? I heard a whisper. Y'all talking behind my back? I'm a partier.
Yeah, no, let's party, you and me. And me, Fireball.
I don't know if Fireball sounds like he's a good idea.
No, Fireball's a great idea. You shut up, Matt.
Yeah, Matt.
You shut up.
I don't...
Fireball, you and me are going to go out to the desert together. How's that sound?
But,
that sounds amazing.
The last time you did that with Fireball, things went bad.
What happened?
Well, you had to call a cleaner.
Hey, don't listen to him. Just pour me down your throat and let's get loose.
Get in my body.
Oh, nice. Good looking. Oh, dang. Look at that heart. Ooh.
How's the inside of my body looking, Fireball?
Boy, oh boy. I feel warm. Do you feel warm?
I feel warm everywhere. Man. Are you
Fireball
sleeping in my...
Oh, my God. I'm sorry. I felt so comfy in here. I was just showing... Oh, man.
Hey,
sorry
you see
about
that TV guide laying around?
Oh, yeah. This one over... Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
All right, well, turn on the TV and get settled in, because I'm going to have
TV
a couple...
inside you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you better believe it.
Notice I wasn't surprised that a TV guide was inside you, but a TV is where I draw the line.
Buckle up, bitches.
Watching Cheers.
You enjoying that? You like that Ted Danson, don't you?
Yeah, he's good.
Hey, wait, is it Shelley Is it the Shelley
Shelley Long or
Shelley
Kirstie
Long,
Alley?
or is it Kirstie Alley?
No, Kirstie Alley.
Oh, good.
Also, Scientology cheers.
Yeah. The good one, the one that got it right.
I'm gonna shake up my belly. All right, Fireball whiskey. It's a party in your belly. All right, let's get back to the show.
Bye.
When you were starting on the Muppets, was it already a success?
Yeah, it was huge. Yeah, it hit a big success in the UK before it did in the States. It actually hit big in the first season, 76, 77 in the UK, and it was about a year later, I think, when it hit big, or 6 months later when it hit big in the States. Then they made the Muppet movie, 77, 78 or thereabouts, and of course, so by that time the Muppets
then it was huge.
Muppet Show was big over here as well in the States. So when I came on board, it was 1980. So they just finished 5 seasons of the Muppet Show, and they were about to get into their movies. So,
well, me and Steven got to tour recently the Jim Henson Creature Shop.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely, yeah.
And I freaked out just seeing a box labeled Mrs. Piggy's Skin.
Oh,
it was just,
man.
That's all. How surreal was it working with
Are you sure
these...
it wasn't a bag of pork scratching?
Yeah, I mean,
it's not quite the same thing, just so you know.
I think that is probably the most intense day that we've ever shared as far as friendship wise, because you walk in and you're walking around and everything that you've ever thought of creatively, this is kind of the basis for everything. Like, it's just, just you're like, oh God, how are we ever going to be able to be like as great as that? I mean, it was so intimidating and also so magical at the same time. Like, how do you do that? Like, how did you do that as far as getting to go and work with someone like Frank Oz and with Jim? Like, that must have been incredibly intense.
Yeah, it was sort of one of those things where you just can't believe, like, is this really happening? Is this really happening? I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that. If you in your wildest dreams that would you even have dared to wish for that stuff? Yeah. So when you're working, of course, you learn very quickly. You have to be very professional. Right. But I was just a sponge. I was just soaking everything up every single day. I was usually the first to arrive at the studio and the last to leave. I just didn't want a day to end, And it's funny, I'm still a bit like that now. Funnily enough, I kind of like to get there nice and early, and when the day's done, I'm kind of sad. It's funny how that stuff stays with you. I'm not cynical. I still treasure everybody and every moment. And, nice. And the passion is still there after all this time, and I learned that from those guys. I mean, Jim and Frank just they'd been doing this for years already. They were such great artists, creative artists and performers, puppeteers, writers, visionaries. I mean, it's like getting an apprenticeship under just the absolute best people, and they were so generous with the help and knowledge as well. The whole team were, all the Muppet guys, and that ethos is still with Muppets to this day. There's a very generous kind of thing about them where it's about helping each other and getting. Jim particularly had a way of getting the best out of everyone. You wanted to do your best for him somehow, and he appreciated everybody. He was not, he was very approachable. He wasn't intimidating in any way. He was kind of like a real life version of Kermit in a way to the Muppets. He was sort of the captain, but everyone cared about him. So yeah.
Now you've worked with a lot of huge names in the entertainment business, from George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Jim Henson, Frank Oz, of course, but also Stanley Kubrick. At least according to IMDb, you were on Full Metal Jacket.
Right, that's actually incorrect, although I did work with his daughter, Kathy Kubrick.
Well, then IMDb is wrong, so never mind. My question doesn't apply.
I keep going into IMDb, and I keep trying to update the corrections, and I think the last lot of stuff they completely ignored me on. It's terrible, because anyone can go in there and they can make an entry.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had to keep going in there and removing stuff. So I think there might have been a plaster or another guy with the same name who made a bunch of films around that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, according to my IMDb, I played Indiana Jones.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, well, I think you did. I think you can take
There's a
that credit. That's definitely so. Yeah,
Indiana
so
Jones
I
and the
didn't
Country
actually work
Buffet.
with it, but, yeah, still actually making jewelry on the Dark Crystal for the Skeksis.
What?
So
Oh,
I knew
wow.
her. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
So there you go.
What a Dark Crystal, such an incredible movie. And at Henson Studios, when me and Mike's were working and writing over there, they have a Skeksis in their lobby.
Yes.
And that thing was insane. What character did you puppeteer? Did you work on a couple different characters on Dark Crystal?
Oh, sorry, I was having some coffee there. Initially, they were building characters, of course, while we were shooting the Great Muppet Caper, because they had a 2-picture deal back to back with the same crew, with Lou Gray, the same film company and everything. So when I wasn't filming at Elstree on set on Muppet Caper, then I'd be going over to the Creature Workshop in Hampstead in London, which was just across the street from Jim's house, and where they were developing all these Dark Crystal characters, and I was actually assembling podlings and slaves. There were, I think, 50 of each, so 100 of them, and every single one had a name. It was amazing. So I was doing that as a builder on Dark Crystal, and then by a few bizarre twists of fate, they were crazy enough to let me take on one of the Skeksis.
Wow!
So I did the total typecasting. You had a hook, a patch over his eye, studs and leather. It was the funniest thing ever. And so he was called the Slave Master, and he'd sort of kick the slaves up the butt and tell them to get a move on and that kind of thing. And it was so funny because Jim would be trying to direct us all in the Crystal Chamber, and he'd come around to try and speak to me, and he'd just burst out laughing. He said, "You just look nothing like this guy," because I was such the opposite of the character. So funny. I actually had my 17th birthday on the set of the Crystal Chamber itself.
Oh wow!
So that was my second film. Yeah. Wow, so I was a youngster.
Yeah. Did you go directly from Dark Crystal to Star Wars Return of the Jedi?
Pretty well. It was the next film that came into the studio, and they were already kind of, I think, gearing up in pre-production by the end of Dark Crystal. And I think we finished Dark Crystal 1, and when we finished filming that, whether it was August or September or something like that. And then Jedi began in the studio in January of the next year, of 82, when we began filming that. So beforehand, basically I had an interview with Robert Watts, the producer, in his office at Elstree. And it was just a short 15-minute interview, basically just talking about what was coming up. And again, I didn't have to audition for that because I think Robert Watts knew, okay, we have all these puppeteers that are trained already to do creatures and animatronics from Jim Henson and from the Dark Crystal. So that's how a lot of us kind of went straight from Crystal to Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, and I mean, as the Skeksis, were you puppeteering that inside of the?
Yeah, it was sort of a puppet creature costume almost. So you would actually, it took two people to put him onto me. So if I were on my knees, then that would be where the Skeksis feet would fall, basically. And I did actually do a few shots where I was I think the only puppeteer who did some Skeksis shots actually on my knees. Otherwise, people were in holes in the ground, or they used little people to walk around in wide shots and stuff like that. So, but your hand will be suspended sort of not quite above your head, but sort of more at an angle in front of you. And so you wore this harness that kind of clipped around the hips with lots of padding and around the shoulder, and they would strap you in, and then your arm would go into this they took a cast of my arm, and it went into this sort of fiberglass padded cradle, and they would Velcro that in, and then they would put the Skeksis head over your hand and feed all the cables down the neck. So you kind of, like, my head would sort of be where his shoulders and chest are in the costume itself, and we'd look down at a little 6-inch black and white monitor, so we could see what the cameras could see, and or at least what one camera could see anyway. And so we had a cable going down. They weren't wireless monitors back then. This was the early days of video feeds for film.
How has technology...
And then I would work the other hand with my hand from its elbow. And if the other arm needed working, a second puppeteer would reach in from underneath and work that. And then we'd have 2 or 3 people pulling cable controls underneath, working things like eye turns and blinks and sneers and that kind of thing. So it was essentially a big Muppet in a way, worked in very much that same style, except you were kind of in a partial costume, you know.
Wow. Now, how has technology changed what you actually need to do? Because, like you mentioned there, you had small monitors in there, and now they've got all kinds of computer-controlled motors and things that they didn't have back then.
Essentially, the way a mechanism is built is pretty well the same. They did start halfway through Dark Crystal. They started replacing some of the Gelfling mechanisms with radio control instead of cable. So that was sort of an early entry into that. But that's the biggest difference, really. I mean, we might now use more carbon fiber instead of fiberglass because it's lighter and stronger and that kind of thing. Weight's often an issue. And yeah, like for things like The Force Awakens now, generally everything is servo motors, and it's all fed through a computer out to an output system for a puppeteer. So now, you know, for Nien Nunb's face, I only need one guy on the entire face now instead of 2 or 3. You know,
sure.
So the computer stuff mixes the movements together basically in any way that the puppeteer wants them to be done. You have a series of controls that fit your hands very nicely and work them that way. So that's really the biggest change. And then the other one, sort of on the outside of things, is now we can use relatively easily. We can use computers to remove rods, remove puppeteers, remove heads, that kind of thing. You know, so and that was not really the case back in the day when I started. And now sets are nice and cool. I mean, they used to be so hot, you know, TV lights and especially some of the big film lights. Yeah. They would just be so hot that oftentimes you'd hear a gigantic explosion above your head and everyone would shout, "Don't look up!" and all these shards of hot glass would come showering down onto everyone's heads. You know, and that was sort of a regular thing. Now lighting is so subtle and cool. You know, they use LEDs and fluorescence and things like that. And lighting is generally more, I've noticed overall on film and television, it's more soft lighting and reflected lighting. So there's sort of different approaches now. I guess even film stock is more sensitive when they do use film, but certainly with the digital production, it's changed a lot in that sense. So I think filmmakers have more options now with how they want to make a movie, and you don't need quite as much gear, as much lighting, and you don't have to have as large a crew necessarily. You can do some great, wonderful things. And film and television now has kind of, the line is blurred now. You know, what is film, what is a TV show? They're sort of almost the same thing, except maybe the budgets are different and the crews are different sizes. But other than that, there's not a huge difference anymore between the two, which I find really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to jump into talking with you about.
Yes, you do.
No, I really do, because we have to talk about Star Wars: Return of the Jedi, because
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Is with and I know that I'm this way, but the fans of Star Wars are this way. We're obsessed with all the little details and all the creatures and you know, all the different characters that are in these films. And as a guy who collects, you know, Star Wars action figures since I was a kid, like, I've been, you know, a little obsessed with it for a long time, and I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan. So, when you were cast as Nien Nunb in that film, were you in the costume? Are you in the gear for that in that film?
Right. I got into it one time for getting into the through the entryway and sitting into the seat in the cockpit, but they never used that stuff. The actual costume was too big for me, really, essentially. So initially, Nien Nunb was actually just a background character. He was in the chorus line of generic background aliens. So they had 2 masks, and performed by an extra, essentially. So whenever you see in Return of the Jedi him walking around with legs in the background, that was before he became Nien Nunb. They shot those things first, and he was just an alien, an extra alien, which was great.
Right.
But the mask didn't have any articulation or anything, as most of them didn't back then. They had no movement whatsoever. So he kind of gaped with his mouth open, and that was it. No eye blinks or anything. So that's fine. So then the extra that performed him was actually a bit taller than me as well. But halfway through the movie, George Lucas decided he needed, oh crap, Chewie's elsewhere. I can't have him be Lando's co-pilot. Who are we going to have for that? So he picked out Nien Nunb out of the aliens that he liked the look of, and they were about. I think it was about 2 weeks or so, just over, before they were about to shoot the scenes in the Falcon. So I hadn't been cast in, nobody had been cast in that yet at this time. And Phil Tippett, of course, was heading up Creature Shop for all these guys. And so I was always hanging around Creature Shop because I had nothing better to do and annoying these people and playing with all the various creatures and puppets and what have you. And Phil Tippett mentioned to me, George has just picked this guy out but he's going to have some dialogue but he doesn't have any movement, and I don't know what we're going to do. Maybe we'll put a little oxygen mask over his mouth and put some bladders in his cheeks to make them move, and it could look like he's talking, perhaps. And I thought, that's not a satisfactory solution to me. So and there were two masks, so I took one of them and put my hand inside and realized, you could. And I showed him, you could sort of, look, you could work this as a puppet. You could, look, I can open and close the mouth. And he saw these light bulbs go on in Phil's head there. And he said, well, that's really interesting. Do you think you could sort of rough in a rig and we could take a look at that and show it to George? And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. I had no idea whether I could or not. But anyway, so I padded it out with foam in the skull and fitted out a little sort of mouth fitting fixture inside the head and gave him some false shoulders and stuff like that. And we actually did a film test within, a few days of that, which George directed. And they had my puppet next to the extra in the other mask. And George basically took us through the paces. I remember him saying, look left, look right, look up, look down, and say something and react or whatever. So, and he was satisfied. He said, "This is great." And then I was suggesting we can perhaps make his eyes blink. And I put my hand behind his ear and said, hey, he could wiggle his ears. I always liked how Stan Laurel used to wiggle his ears in some of his movies and stuff. I thought, hey, that'd be fun. He's got these big giant ears. We could wiggle his ears. And then so George was all over that. He asked the tech guys, hey, can you do that? And they said, yeah, I think so. So off they went with the head to ILM in California and fitted him out. And within 2 weeks, I think he was back, and we were filming the scene, which actually George Lucas directed those cockpit scenes because Richard Marquand was directing the Rancor pit scenes on another stage at the same time. They were getting a little bit behind on their schedule, so George actually was in the directing seat for those scenes. So that's kind of how it came about. So I ended up somehow giving myself that job. But he was actually a Muppet, essentially. I was underneath. They had to cut the bottom of the seat out of the Falcon, and they were very nervous about that because they were 1973 race car seats, actually, is what they were. And they said, we can't get any more of these. I don't know what we're going to have to do. You sure you want to cut the bottom of this out? So, and I laid flat on my back, and my hand was inside one of Nien Nunb's hands, and the other one was just a dummy hand rigged onto the steering yoke of the Falcon.
Oh my God!
And we did the scene that way. So I had another little monitor on my chest, and I put in guide dialogue. The script didn't really have any real dialogue. It just said Nien Nunb chatters and stuff like that, and then Lando would reply, with what he says in the final movie. And I didn't really like that too much, so I actually penciled in what I thought he should be saying. In English, and we all knew that the dialogue would be replaced by Ben Burton, those guys anyway. So I wrote in what I thought his dialogue should be, and I showed it to George. Do you think I could say this? I was 17, I didn't know any better. And he looked it over and he said, "Oh yeah, sure, I don't see why not." So so I got to write my own dialogue for the scene, and we read through it with Billy D. Williams, and that was it basically. So I got to do pretty well. Whatever. I mean, I guess I gave myself the job, And then I got to write my own dialogue and how long each line was, and I decided when to nod and when to laugh, and all his sort of expressions. I just kind of made stuff up as I went along. We didn't really have any rehearsal. So
now on Force Awakens and in Episode 8, are you wearing the piece? Is it different? Is it changed the way that the character's done?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So now I'm I had costume fittings, and they took molds of my life cast on my head and shoulders, so they could fit a mask to me, fit a helmet and all that kind of thing. So he's still foam the way the other one was, although this one is a much softer, nicer foam. But now he has all the servo. Before he had two people on cable controls for his face in Return of the Jedi. One was actually, I think, Tim Rose, who did Akbar and Salacious Crumb and some Snoodle stuff and all that. I think he actually did the eye blinks for me on Nien Nunb. And Simon Williamson, who was Max Rebo, I think did the ear wiggles, if I remember correctly. So it took two other people to help me on that. But with this one, I'm actually inside the suit. He's the same height as me. The costume was fitted for me. No one else will fit inside that thing. And I have one puppeteer outside working the face on radio control with their gadgets, and we have talkback with earpieces and that kind of thing. And I basically rehearse the scenes with the head off, and I tell them my intent as we go through the scene, so they know what I'm thinking, and I tell them to watch my face so they can copy what my face is doing. And I try to stay pretty consistent and lock in a performance, basically. So very clean sort of beats, like here I'm concerned, here I'm feeling good about something, and when I might turn my head on this when they say this line, so make sure you do a nice clean blink when I turn the head. And we kind of talk through everything as much as we have time for actually on set. And then off we go, and we talk to each other sometimes during the take, and certainly in between takes on earpieces and that sort of thing. So it's a very different process now, but I still have in mind this is the same guy. He still has the same beats as the puppet did, the same sort of timings, the same thought processes. It's just instead of my hand now, it's my own head. So it's kind of nice that there's a continuity still. Whether it reads or shows remains to be seen yet. We have more movies yet to come out, but I do want there to be a real continuity between the two. And at some point before we're done, I'm determined to get that chuckle in that he had, that laugh that he had in Return of the Jedi, because that's kind of a trademark thing. And by hook or by crook, I want to get that in somewhere. So we'll see. We're not done yet.
Yeah. On the IMDb, it says, and you have to
the IMDb.
On the IMDb, it says that you also played or helped puppeteer Ree Yees and there's a couple other characters. Does that make sense?
A hand puppet version of Ree Yees, and I performed that when he's in the archways. He's the only one that had a mouth movement and eye blinks. And then there was a costume version that Paul Springer worked. When you see him wider with legs, that was Paul Springer.
Right, and so when you saw the close up, it was you. It was you puppeteering. What about? And it also says that you were Cy Snoodles. Is that or that you were one of the puppeteers on that?
Yeah, with Tim Rose actually. There were two versions of Cy Snoodles. There was the full length version, which was sort of the legs were rotted from below the set, and Tim Rose wore a thing where he would. I think her feet were attached to his knees. So as he moved his legs under the set, her feet would dance, and then he had a bar that. That kind of went up to her hips, so he could work her hips and wiggle her hips. He always thought of her as kind of a Tina Turner kind of look. So he was underneath working that, and then I was above working the shoulders on wires. So it was kind of a weird puppet in the wide shots. But then when we went into close up, there was a different version of her. And then Tim Rose was inside doing it was just sort of it existed from the waist up only. So he sort of put his head inside her body and would do her gross actual body turns and tilts. And then he had a control inside that worked the base of her snout, so he could sort of direct it in different directions. Yeah. And then I had a cable control going out to actually work the singing lips in close-up.
Oh, my God, that's amazing.
Yeah. So that's how that worked. So when she was singing, then that was me working the cable controls for her little lips on the end.
Mike Black.
Until we were replaced with computer graphics, of course.
Oh God!
Right, yeah.
Yes. When you saw that replacement for the first time, what was? Are you allowed? Would you mind telling us how you felt?
I don't mind telling you. I was horrified. I mean, I was scared for one thing. I thought, oh goodness, are they going to replace poor old Nien Nunb? Am I going to be removed forever from history, from the film? Entirely. Is he going to be CG and overacting and moving way too much because he can?
Oh yeah.
No, I understood. That there was kind of an experiment and a sort of a growth period for CG and figuring out what worked and what didn't. But it was too cartoony for me. The limitations of the puppets in many ways kept it real and kept it grounded. I mean, when you think of Jabba the Hutt, he really didn't do anything. He could do nothing. I mean, he even had a hard time turning his head left and right. He was just this big blob of fiberglass and foam. But in that reality, he was there. He cast shadows. People could look at him. You could. I mean, on set, you could smell the rubber even. You could hear the fiberglass crunching underneath, and it was real. It was real, limited but real, and that's fine. Less is usually more. And with CG, look, we can make his face turn inside out, and we can do all these big Tex Avery Warner Brother cartoon takes and things. And it felt a bit like that to me with Snoodles and the other singer that they introduced, the hairy singer guy.
Oh yeah, the weird little
almost
testicle man.
Oh, testicle man.
Cheesy.
Yeah,
it just felt cheesy, and it is fine. But of course, I'm going to go with the puppet any day. And most people do sort of tell me that they prefer the puppets anyway when I'm doing shows and that kind of thing. So that's kind of cool.
It's definitely come back around now. Like everybody wants to be able to feel it and touch it and see it, and you could see that on Force Awakens just watching the how it looked like it was. It was being made.
It's so funny when the first footage started coming out, and we first saw that shot of BB-8 rolling along the sand, and everyone was crying, "Oh, it's CG! You can tell it's terrible. It's all CG." And of course, it wasn't. And even some people were saying when they saw the first shots of Nien Nunb in the X-wing in the trailer, you could tell it's fake. It's so fake. It's CG, and everything was all in camera. I was saying, no, it's real. It's real. I guess they were so trained to just cry foul and ready to write it off, but it was all real, and that came from JJ and Kathleen Kennedy, and wow, what a great thing. I mean, they could have used anyone for Nien Nunb, but no, he wanted Tim Rose back for Akbar and me back for Nien Nunb.
Hell yeah!
Wow, what a wonderful, lovely gift.
Oh my God, that's unbelievable. Couple real quick ones. Yes, Mike. Go ahead.
No problem.
Yeah, I had one question. Nien Nunb. It seems like between Jedi and Force Awakens, it seemed as though he had chin implants. Am I crazy? His chin looked a lot more masculine.
Did he get some work done?
Did he have work done?
And rather than, it looks like he's put on a lot of weight around his midsection. That's where I thought you were going with this.
No.
I was about to make a quick exit.
We're not calling you. We're not saying that. Trust us.
Much too classy.
That was the second question, which now you're quickly erasing. The thing is, he not too much. I think he's more textured. He's got, things have sagged a little more. He does actually have more wrinkles. He's a lot more weathered.
Oh, that may be it.
I don't know what he's been doing in the last 30-odd years.
That makes sense.
I think he's been busy, and age is catching up with him a little bit. So I think, if anything, he's probably just a little more aged. Just got more texture. His skin's a little bit darker, and he does have more lines and wrinkles. So it's not. I mean, it also may be the angle that he sits on my head as well, so I can see through the eyes. Little subtle things like that may make certain things more pronounced than others. It's close. It really is close. I know when they were sculpting him, they didn't have the originals to copy. They actually weren't allowed, I think, to take them and use them, because also they're museum pieces. They're so fragile now anyway.
Oh yeah.
So they had to kind of go off photos and just sort of guess at everything. as well. But they also wanted to age him as well. He's a lot older now. So
yeah, I did like that.
there will be differences.
He looked 30 years older.
Yeah,
but
that's cool.
in a good way.
Yeah.
You know?
Hopefully so. Yeah, I mean, he was very serious in The Force Awakens. There was, he was kind of goofy in Jedi, and suddenly you got this serious guy frowning and squinting, and I think he realized the gravity of the situation and what was really at stake in The Force Awakens. So he kind of took that on. But I still think there's the other side of him that's a little more relaxed and happy-go-lucky, and we might see some of that at some point too, I guess, in the future.
How's Ryan Johnson to work with? Or it's Ryan Johnson,
great.
Right? That's the right.
Yeah, everybody loved him. He was so much fun and very, very approachable. And
he's directing
very
episode
friendly.
8.
So he's lovely.
That must have been incredible. What about JJ on?
Amazing. I mean, my goodness, can you imagine having the responsibility of bringing this franchise back? Not only do you have to satisfy the old school characters and fans, but you've also got to introduce the franchise to a whole new audience and set up a whole new storyline. Very daunting, and he just handled it with such character and fun, and he was great on set and always had a laugh and kept his cool. He was very gracious and very kind. It was lovely. He was thanking me for coming and doing this, and I'm thinking, well, what are you doing? Of course I'm going to come and do this. It was lovely. He really was. He was great. I mean, I think he just did an amazing job, which was, I think it was kind of an impossible job, to be honest, and I don't know how he pulled it off. I mean, he fought hard on that movie to get extra time to finish it right, and not I think Disney wanted to release it, have it be a summer release, and he was saying no, and he fought for that extra time, rightly so, and it paid off. It totally paid off.
Well, it's got to be. It's also got to be kind of intense to be in movies like that where if you really can't tell anybody anything. Like really can't talk about them for years at a time. Like that.
Yeah, it was.
How does that affect?
The hardest secret I ever had to keep. I mean, it was something like a year and a half where I couldn't say to anybody what I was doing, and I was just like so excited. But I couldn't say anything. It was really hard.
Oh my God! Especially, are you married?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
yes,
man.
thank you, though. I appreciate the offer, but yes, I am.
Well, just coming home to your wife after work and not being able to be like, "You're not going to believe what I saw today." That's
exactly. I so wish she could have been on set as well. Jerry, her name is, and I would have given anything just to have her be on set because she's a big fan too. As I'm a big Star Wars fan as well. I always have been. So I just wish that I could have shared that joy, that experience with her. And of course, the sets were security was so tight. Even I couldn't get on set, and I was in the film, so it was that tight. So
what was the real big difference between the sets? Like, what was the set like between doing something like Episode 8 or doing Force Awakens and doing Jedi? Like, what's the difference between what it felt like on those sets?
That's the thing. There really hardly wasn't any difference. I mean, the sets they built over in the UK are just so wonderful. You could go right up close with your own eyes, and you'll swear that that's rusted metal, and it's just some plastic painted and textured in a certain way. The detail, the work they do on those sets and props and things are just phenomenal, and costumes and everything. So there really wasn't any difference. It was like going back 33 years again in time. Suddenly I was back at working on Jedi again. Everything was kind of recognizable. The only real difference I would say was the lighting. The lighting was different. The way they approach that now, that was to me the biggest difference.
They built a complete Millennium Falcon for this one, didn't they?
Yeah, they rebuilt it from scratch. Absolutely.
So, there was a complete one in the originals in Jedi as well?
Yeah. I think, let's see, they had some half Falcons as well, that you just see from one side, I think, and that kind of thing. And they're all modular and components, so they can remove the cockpit and that kind of thing as well, and put them on gimbals. And for The Force Awakens, they put the Falcon cockpit on a mechanical gimbal, which was the same one they used for our X-Wings as well, our X-Wing cockpits. Wow. When you see inside the windows there when we're flying around. And so whereas before, they had stagehands just rocking us around on scaffolding poles, and that kind of thing. So that was another big difference. Now they had to put us in this big 20-foot high mechanical bucking Bronco thing with a 20-foot perimeter fence and emergency stop buttons on every corner, and nobody was allowed in there. It was quite a scary thing to be up in this thing. One guy is controlling the actual thing manually with a joystick and a knob, I think, and a little sentry box somewhere where you could see everything. But they had this high fence all around it. You climbed this stairway. There were two film cameras that were bolted onto the cockpit. And you climb in. They actually literally strap you in, buckle you in, and then they'll leave. And all I have is talk back at that point. There's nobody allowed within the fence, and you whatever it is, 20 feet up in the air, and that's it. You're done, and hold on for dear life, basically.
Wow.
And that was quite a rush, I can tell you.
Now,
I thought I was going to be sick in there, but actually, I think I was just so the adrenaline was going so high at that point. It wasn't going to happen. So.
Oh yeah.
Now with this movement back to practical effects, I'd love it if you would talk a little bit about a great movie that had to do with that, Little Shop of Horrors.
Definitely. Yeah, it's so funny because at that point we were aware that CG was coming, and we were at one stage. I think we had 60 puppeteers on that thing as he grew to the largest plant.
Wow.
60 puppeteers. That's a lot.
That's incredible.
If I remember correctly, anyway. So, but we rehearsed for months and months on this thing, getting I think one of the main things I did was top lip on some of the songs and dialogue, and then Dave Barkley, who was Jabba the Hutt and worked with Yoda on Empire and Jedi, he did the bottom lip, and we were one team, and then there was another team that did lip sync, and we tag teamed on different songs on that. So, but I remember we were really hurting ourselves on these pulling these giant cables around and all this rubber, and we were thinking, oh, when are they gonna invent CG? Come on, why are they torturing us like this?
Now,
now, of course, wow! It was what Frank Oz did in that movie was just a beautiful thing. I just love what he did. It was amazing. It was such a hard film for everybody as well. A long movie, a cold winter at Pinewood, I recall. Most of that was shot on the 007 Bond stage at Pinewood.
Mm-hmm. Now,
and it was so cold that the actors had to chew ice so you wouldn't see their breath in between the takes.
Wow, really?
That's crazy.
Yeah, Rick Moranis and Ellen, and yeah.
Now, how is it, you mentioned, so you did the top lip and somebody else did the bottom lip. How do you coordinate that to make it look like somebody's really talking? How much practice does that take?
A lot, yeah, and then there's someone else opening and closing the jaw as well. And if we get out of sync, then the lips don't talk properly. Yeah. So we rehearsed literally for months on the songs. That's how we did it. We got it set down so that we would learn when to move, when not to move, how much to move, and we wanted a little asymmetrical sort of smile or whatever, and grin and all those things. We logged it in basically so that we just mechanically went through it, didn't have to think about it. Just no different to when you drive a car or when you walk or whatever, or when you eat. You don't really think about, I must open my mouth and I must chew and, all that. I mustn't poke my eye out with a fork. You just know how to do it. So we had to get to that stage with the lip sync, otherwise it wasn't going to happen. So we rehearsed that thing for months and months and months. Wow. Actually, that's how we did it.
Now, you were also on Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was kind of their main hand puppeteer on that movie. So I mean, I still did guns on rods and for the weasels and that kind of thing. And then let's see, I think I was the cocktail shaker for the octopus bartender. And we did the penguin trays in the Ink and Paint Club. And when Roger Rabbit was jumping up and down on the bed, I'd be underneath pulling his little footprints in the bed, that kind of thing. So we did all that stuff. But other than that, there were times when they needed some specific kind of hand puppetry stuff, like when the weasel has a bar of soap in his mouth and he's blowing bubbles. That's me working him as though I actually wore this gray glove so they could draw over him. But I'm kind of performing him as though he's a puppet, as though the weasel's a Muppet.
Never thought of that.
So I actually have the soap in the mouth and everything, and I'm kind of coughing and spluttering.
So that's how they're able
to. They have to animate over my hand, and the same with when he caught the weasel caught the record in the bar, the terminal bar, when Judge Doom throws the record across the room, and he catches it in his mouth. that was me working him as though he's a hand puppet as well.
Jeez, man, that's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
We actually just had Charles Fleischer, who played Roger Rabbit,
man, great,
on our
great.
show. He was just on our show, on our live show.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, he's a very clever guy.
Yeah. Very interesting fella. Before we wrap things up, I just have one last thing, because I mean, we could talk to you forever. We're huge fans of everything you've done. So, but on Labyrinth, you worked with David Bowie.
Yes,
and Bowie was around. Do you have any stories? Anything you'd like to chat with us about Mr. Bowie?
Oh yeah, let's see. Yeah, he was lovely. He was the thing about David Bowie is he was by that time I guess he'd got everything figured out. I mean, he was just a down to earth guy, and he knew that these costumes, these personas weren't real. They were just characters, and underneath that he was a hardworking creative and businessman. I mean, he was just a regular guy smoking cigarettes. Like, hello, lads, how you doing? Hanging out with the crew and all that kind of stuff, having a laugh, and he was very gracious. And of course, Jennifer Connelly was just did it amazing for her first big film, I guess. Yeah. Connor for Jenny, as I used to call her, and managed to get half the crew calling her that for a while. So after a while, but yeah, David Bowie was a lot of fun. There was one time when I thought I was going to get into trouble. They were shooting the big scene where she first meets Jareth in the bedroom when she's putting Toby to sleep, and she calls him in, and they have that big introduction, and there's all the goblins sort of hiding in drawers and cupboards and all that kind of thing, and they kind of all spring out at one point. And I was doing one of those guys. Well, I don't know if you've heard I think it was in the 1960s, he had a novelty song called The Laughing Gnome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If not, go check it out. And so I gave that to the sound guys to play on set during the middle of their big scene, and then we were going to have the goblins all pop out and sing that. And it was, they did it. They played it back. We all popped out and started miming to the song, and Jim was trying to direct this thing. I thought, oh boy, we're going to get in trouble. I'm going to get all in trouble. I'm going to get fired. And how much money is this joke costing the production? And, this is a big introduction for the two of those characters together. So, but anyway, Jim, of course, being Jim, chuckled, and David had a good laugh, and he went along with it just fine. So he was a good guy. He really was. He really was. And of course his the wig that he wore. He used to call that his Tina Turner wig because I guess that was it was 1985 when we shot that. It's amazing though. I mean he worked so hard. He was working on the songs, and he was also doing Live Aid that same summer, same time we were filming Labyrinth, and he was shooting Absolute Beginners at night as well at another studio.
Damn.
So he was doing all this stuff at the same time, and then as the songs were coming out and the scenes were being edited together, he was remixing the music to keep it current. He'd wait until the last minute to do final mixes. To keep up with, because trends change musically every 3 to 6 months. So, So he waited till the last possible moment to do final mixes on the song. So he was an amazing guy. He really was. And I worked with him on the 2 music videos as well. That was directed by Steve Barron, who was, of course, well known for doing the Money for Nothing music video and the Storyteller and that kind of thing. So that was really nice as well. Yeah, he was a great guy. He really was. Just a great man and great creative and lovely to work with. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Really incredible. Mike, you're one of those guys who it seems like you followed your dreams and your passion your whole life, and to be working with Henson and Frank Oz and all these guys at 17 years old and 18 years old, completely 16 unreal, and just really goes to show like following your heart and going after what you want. If you could say a little something to any of our listeners that our subscribers, just kind of how you feel about kind of going after your dreams.
Yeah, I mean, I would. There's a lot of people. I think it's a little bit like Wizard of Oz. You know, Dorothy keeps getting put off by all these things as she's going on her journey. And there are always a lot of things a lot of reasons to not do something. You know, self-doubts, fears. What will people say? Or I could never do that. Or I'm not very good at this. Or it's not possible. Or who do I think I am doing this? Or I don't have the money. Or that's the other side of the world. Whatever. I mean, we can often put a lot of barriers in our own way, or we'll let other people do that and tell us, you know, you're crazy. You should get a regular job. And if that's you, then fine. Then go ahead and do that. But for me, I mean, a lot of people tell me I could never do what you do. I have to have a steady job. But for me, I couldn't get a regular job if I tried. So all I know is this sort of the feast or famine crazy roller coaster thing. And, you know, it's not all roses. It's quite hard sometimes, but I wouldn't change it for anything. So I would say, you know, find what where your real heart is, where your passion is, what makes you happy. It doesn't have to be a career. It could be a hobby. It could be a side job. It could, you know, there's all different levels in between. It could just be for fun. It could just be for yourself or for your kids or whatever. You don't have to make it into a full-time career. And it certainly doesn't have to happen overnight. Excuse me. It usually it doesn't. You know, usually people are overnight successes over 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
But you know, if there's something that really makes you happy, then follow that. Whether I really wish I could paint watercolors. You know, whatever. Do it. Just learn that stuff. We have the training out there now. It's so easy to get hold of. And the tools are there, the information's there, the knowledge is there. There are usually people that are willing to help us if we need information. When I started out, there was nowhere to learn. I didn't know how to do puppetry. There was nowhere to go. Now there are schools you can go to learn to do exactly this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But there wasn't then, and it's the same for anything else now. If you're happy and if you're happy, you're going to live longer, for one thing, most likely. And not only that, but you're going to make the people around you happier too. And you will then inspire others. So be inspired, but also be the best you that you can be. You know, a lot of people say to me, I want to be just like George Lucas. I want to be just like Jim Henson or Walt Disney. And I keep telling them, no, you do not. We don't need any. We've already had those guys. We need you to be the best you can be. Find out who you are and what you are and follow that and enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to the people around you. So never be put off by other people telling you can't do it or you shouldn't do it, because that's ridiculous. You know, so I think we're all capable of so much more than we even realize. And I'll even say that about myself too. I have no idea what I'm capable of. But I think if I applied myself and obsessed enough about a certain thing, I could probably just completely shock myself with what I could do. So, and I think it's true of all of us. Yeah. We've just had that built into us or programmed into us that, you know, we can't and we shouldn't, and that's ridiculous. And who do you think you are? It's nonsense. It's nonsense. We are all amazing creatures, and we don't realize that.
Well, Mike, you're the coolest. We are all very much looking forward to seeing you in everything that you have coming up and in your life.
Thank you so much.
Is there a place? Is there a place that people can follow you on the internet if they want to check you out?
Let's see. Right now, sort of the only thing that I'm sort of updating on any regular basis is just my Mike Quinn Facebook page, really. But also, if people are interested in learning about puppetry or how to be a puppeteer or anything like that, then they can head on over to secretsofpuppetry.com, and I will be launching they can sign up to get on a notification list where I'll be launching as far as I understand, is the world's first online puppetry training academy.
Cool. Wow.
And I'll be teaching things that were taught to me directly from Jim Henson and Frank Oz during things like the Dark Crystal puppetry workshops. So there's a direct lineage of what I'm teaching that came from Jim and Frank and all those Muppet guys as well. So they can go over to secretsofpuppetry.com and get their name on the list, and then I'll shoot out emails when I have something ready, and I'll have some free stuff up as well, and I'll have some super cheap things, and I'll probably have some high level thing that will have one-on-one training for the ones that are really serious about it. But again, it's for hobbyists, it's for people that maybe just want to do stuff at school or libraries or whatever, or make their own show online or whatever. So that's another place they can go for later on. So.
I love it. Mike Black, our announcer, where can people find you on the internet?
At Mike Black Attack on all social media.
And Matt Walker, love it. Matt, where can people get you?
You can look up everything you need to know about me at funnymatt.com, or if you're annoyed by me, please let me know at mattwalkersucks.com.
And really, a lot of people have a problem with Matt.
Yeah.
You can always get me at Stephen Glickman, STEPHEN, Glickman on all social media. This has been absolutely incredible. Mike, thank you so much for coming to hang out with us and chatting about things.
Thank you, guys. It's been a real pleasure. I really appreciate it. And thanks for asking me to come along. It's been a lot of fun. You take care.
You too. Talk to you real soon.
Cheers.